Oh, the irony of having just recently talked about the politics involved with manufacturers of hardware and gaming developers. We talked about the fact that certain, technologies and stuff get a little extra, when it comes to maybe throw this technology into your game. It's like, oh, you see the stack, you want more of it? Well, you gotta use more of our features. But it's actually come to a very obvious head, specifically with Pearl Abyss and Crimson Desert. Because if you guys have been paying attention and let's say you own an Intel Arc graphics card, all 7 of you may have gone to load Crimson Desert, and then your game literally just pops up an error message saying your GPU or your hardware is not supported, and then just won't launch. And so Pearl Abyss actually put out a statement, and here's the exact statement. It says, we are currently working on compatibility and optimization support so that Crimson Desert can also be enjoyed on Intel Arc GPU systems. We are preparing to provide a smooth and stable gameplay experience, and we ask for your patience until the support update becomes available. Well, that's a bunch of bullshit. And here's why. So in a true Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man meme, Intel has actually responded to this, because the initial response is like, oh, look how bad Intel is. Look how bad the Intel GPUs are. When, let's face it, I don't care about the CPU side or what you guys think about that. We need a third player in graphics. We've known this for a long time. I think most people have really been rooting for Arc to really kind of come and disrupt the GPU industry. Those that have adopted Arc have seen massive gains over time when it comes to driver optimizations and game developers optimizing better for Arc. But this is the first time we've seen Arc be completely omitted from game launch day 1 support. And Intel put out a response. And the Intel response makes things very interesting, which definitely brings the whole politics side of hardware manufacturers getting involved in development studios, causing potential problems for consumers, and this is the first real hard evidence of that. Intel responded and said, we're aware that Crimson Desert currently doesn't launch on systems with Intel GPUs, and we're hugely disappointed that players using Intel graphics hardware can't jump into the world of Pywell at launch. Now, they go on to say, getting games running smoothly is always a partnership between developers and hardware makers. Now, before I continue the statement, that's important. We're not talking about just getting in DLSS versus FSR, or getting NVIDIA Reflex in there, or getting any of the Hairworks or whatever, right? Whatever the technologies may be, getting that stuff optimized is after you get support for the hardware itself. So AMD and NVIDIA will send engineers and sometimes even embed them in the development offices with the developers to make sure that there is a representative on hand that is capable of making sure that the hardware is the drivers are supported, the hardware is supported, the engine supported, so that you get day 1 launch support. Now, that's why drivers sometimes on day 1 aren't as great as they could be, because sometimes you can only plan for so many permeations of hardware, and then things happen, and I'm getting off on a tangent. But the point is, you would have day 1 support. So it really sounds like initially that Intel wasn't involved in any of this, which leads to questions as to why was Intel engineers not involved in the development at Pearl Abyss when it comes to Crimson Desert. And they went on to say, over the past several years, we've reached out to Pearl Abyss many times to help test, validate, and optimize support for Intel graphics, providing early hardware, drivers, and engineering resources across multiple generations, including Alchemist, Battle Mage, Meteor Lake, and Lunar Lake. So according to Intel, they've reached out, they've supported, they've provided, and yet still not represented with this title. And this is the first time we've really seen just a flat out non-representation for a game developer with a certain hardware brand. Now, obviously, Intel is not a big player in the graphics division right now. We know that, but we need them to be. And when you have a big title that's being launched like this, and having it not be supported is almost sending a message. And the message is, there was more of this from AMD and NVIDIA than from Intel. And you might be saying to yourself, well, Jay, maybe they really did just kind of miss Intel or didn't have time to develop before it. Well, then ask yourself why they have Apple support. Why do they specifically support MacBooks? I mean, they specifically show support for Apple M series silicon with iGPU support. In fact, they even support what they call Metal FX and Apple's upscaler, like frame gen technology. So how are you going to support for a brand like Apple, which literally has like no representation in PC gaming, to be honest? I mean, sure, the new laptops, people are like, hey, they can kind of game on them, but they're not a gaming brand, obviously. And Intel Arc being specifically a gaming GPU to be omitted entirely, it's pretty easy to just assume that that is entirely by design. But here's what's mind-boggling. It's all trapped in your mind like a bottle. Anyway, so it would have been very little effort on Pearl Abyss's side to get support for Intel Battle Mage, whatever version, right? Alchemist, Battle Mage at support. So it really seems like a choice that happened, especially if what Intel is saying is true, that they were providing support, at least as much support as they could. I'm really getting the vibe from this. They didn't flat out say Pearl Abyss didn't respond or left them on red or just ignored them. It just sounds like they weren't utilizing them. And they provided drivers and hardware and engineers. And it just sounds like they were like, thanks, but no thanks. But the point is, there is absolutely evidence of these types of interactions happening between the manufacturers and the developers. Now, that's not always a bad thing. It's not. But what's a bad thing is if you can influence a developer to say, hey, we'll give you an extra stack of money, and these, don't fool yourself. These are not thousands of dollars. These are millions of dollars that these manufacturers are spending within these development studios to support their technologies. And we'll kind of break down where some of that money comes from and how it flows in a second here. But there's no hard evidence of this, but there's definitely implied evidence of, circumstantial, I know, that maybe some brands are willing to say, okay, we will better optimize for your hardware in exchange for, I don't know, maybe you bundle our game with your GPU and you buy those codes from us and 500,000 codes, right? Let's get realistic here. When it comes to mainstream graphics, whether we're talking like 4070, 3070, let's go back when things were more normal. Let's just say 3070. No, that wasn't normal. Let's say 1070, okay? The amazing Pascal era. Millions of those cards were made. And if there was a launch time with like, hey, this graphics card's launching, it's debuting new technology in this game, and we're gonna bundle this $80 title with the graphics card. As a consumer, you're like, cool, I wanted that game anyway. I'm gonna buy this graphics card. I'm gonna get this game for free, sweet. That game wasn't free. It was for you, but not for, let's just say NVIDIA. Let's say it's an $80 title. The average key cost at wholesale, whatever, for those back-end arrangements could range anywhere from 20 to 30 bucks, right? So it's less than half of the value. But what's 20 or $30 times, let's say 500,000 copies of that were distributed amongst that window of get this title for free? Do you remember the game bundles? Where AMD and NVIDIA were doing anywhere between 2 or 3 games, not just pick one, but you get all 3 of these titles? This is equating towards millions of dollars. Now, the incentive and the influence comes from the developer saying, whoever wants to buy more of these titles, keys to bundle with your graphics cards, we're listening. So then you start to get the influence of, okay, fine, we'll buy 500,000 keys from you at wholesale. We will provide all of these assets on our dime, but we want our logo in the splash screen. We want our advertising of XYZ title features, blah, 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 new technologies and stuff. Now you're lobbying. Now you've got politics at a very different level. These aren't lawmakers and such, but it's lobbying, it's politics being played on, rather than having true equality and brand agnostic gaming experience. You now have gaming experiences that are completely driven by the money exchanging behind the scenes. And here's some examples of that. So we'll start with AMD. AMD's own gaming pages say that its featured games are developed in collaboration with AMD engineers. That's normal. That's fine. This is an unusually explicit admission that AMD provides hands-on technical support for games and not just logo placement. Nothing wrong with that, but that's just obviously saying that they're involved, like we're saying that they are. AMD also said that FSR was built in close collaboration with leading studios and game developers, and that more than 40 developers have pledged support at launch in 2021. Now, that was when RDNA 3 was coming out, I think it was 3, was happening in 21. AMD's release also quotes studios describing FSR integration as smooth and highlights AMD's open source dev resource model through GPU Open. Older AMD evidence goes back as well beyond the last decade. In 2014, AMD announced exclusive gaming partnerships. So now you're seeing the exclusivity side of tech and engineering support. And we've seen this with certain titles too, like Borderlands 3. When that title first launched, it was shitting all over NVIDIA in parity. So for like a like-for-like GPU tier, which normally is very close on benchmarks, was just light years ahead on AMD cards, which showed optimization over one brand. And we've seen that on the CPU side of things. We've seen lots of programs really gimp Intel versus AMD and vice versa. And it's really apparent here. But anyway, exclusive gaming partnerships for Sniper Elite 3, Murdered Soul Suspect, Lichdom describing Gaming Evolved as an ISM program that assists developers and quoting studios about official optimization work, Mantle support, DirectX effects, True Audio, and AMD being a tech partner. Now that's straight from AMD's own press release back then. So they're not even hiding it, right? Which is the way it should be. You should honestly know if this type of lobbying and money exchanging, because the money is going from the hardware to the software. The software team is never paying AMD, NVIDIA, or Intel for any of this stuff. It's the other way around. This one actually comes from The Verge, but anyway, it says, reported that Starfield launched without DLSS support, while AMD was the game's exclusive PC partner, and wrote that both Bethesda and AMD engineers worked together on optimization. The article also notes the ambiguity around what the exclusivity arrangement meant in practice, which is useful this is saying it's useful for the politics angle regarding what takes place in games. So to see FSR support, but no DLSS support at launch, when you know NVIDIA engineers were involved with the development of that, shows clear intent and bias, which is bad for consumers. So this is where your gaming experience should be limited by your hardware's capability of running the tech, not how well the tech is optimized in a unilateral sense rather than bilateral, based on the money that's exchanging hands behind the scenes. Now, NVIDIA has obviously, remember 2017 with GameWorks? GameWorks was a suite of technologies that was like almost like a la carte, where you could pick from these technologies and throw them into titles. Realistically, it was really useful for like indie developers to be able to potentially license this certain tech and then get it into your game. That would be one of those examples where you could potentially have money flowing from the developer to the hardware side of things, because you are basically gaining access to the development work that's already been done, or licensing of that nature. But it was like an a la carte system where you could get it kind of thrown into your game. But NVIDIA announced GameWorks DX12 in 2017 as a collection of resources for game developers intended to increase realism and shorten product cycles. That's clear evidence of, obviously, NVIDIA offering structured engineering and dev tools for studios. Not a bad thing, unless you're incentivizing to use their tech, means you have to somehow have their tech be above competitors. Unreal Engine. NVIDIA's Unreal Engine developer page says its plugins and custom branches shorten the development cycle. Again, showing that NVIDIA's support model is not just advertising. Let's see other games here. On individual games, Ubisoft and Star Wars Outlaws being enhanced as part of the collaboration with NVIDIA using RTX DI, Ray Trace GI, NVIDIA's Global Illumination. NVIDIA's own page says it has partnered with Ubisoft, Massive Entertainment, and Lucas Games to deliver the definitive PC experience, and describes the game as being enhanced with RTX DI, DLSS 3.5, and other RTX features. And it's explicit evidence of technical collaboration tied with launch partnerships. Again, the exclusivity or collaboration is not a problem, as long as you are giving, as a developer, they're giving equal opportunity to both parties. It should not be one hardware manufacturer is allowed to stand up above the other because they have more money to give. Black Myth Wukong, NVIDIA said it was acting in partnership with Game Science and As part of the collaboration, the PC version was enhanced with full ray tracing, DLSS, and reflex. Incorporating the technologies is not a problem, as long as, like I said, you're unilaterally providing that level of support for all technologies that exist. And then Diablo 4 and Blizzard and NVIDIA partnership to bring game-changing technologies, DLSS 3, Reflex, and all that sort of stuff. But the game bundles, the keys, that's the number one evidence of a true exchange of money that has taken place. Because here's the thing. No money should be exchanging hands, as far as I'm concerned, between the manufacturer and the developer. None. Exchanging of assets and resources, embedding an engineer in-house to make sure that the technologies are being implemented efficiently, that drivers are optimized, and all of that expense lands on the manufacturer because of resources they're providing is one thing. But the game bundles is the most disguised lobbying that's right in your face that you can't deny, because they are buying those keys. That is not a favor. That is not a favor being provided by the game developer to the manufacturer. Those are being purchased. And what that allows for the game developers to consider, it's guaranteed upfront profit. Guaranteed. You know, we talk about pre-order. Pre-order being a bad thing. Don't give developers your money before they've earned it. Before you give them your money, AMD or Intel or NVIDIA already have. So imagine the amount of money these studios are kind of able to recoup and make before it's ever even hit the market, which is why when games come out as complete piles of horse shit, just like Crimson Desert, it looks like it is right now with the buggy mess that it is, they've already made millions upon millions of dollars back. Now, what it costs to make the game versus what they get up front with a lot of these bundle deals and stuff, I don't know, because none of that stuff is public, and that's what I think should be public. I think any of these types of exchanges that are taking place where money is exchanging hands, like specific cash, liquid flow, should be disclosed. I think that should be a law that says X amount of money was spent by this company on this company. And even right now in doing digging with financial reports and such, it's not itemized. It is not itemized on their expenditures of what they actually spent, either in resource form or cash flow to any of these developers. So you're completely blind to whether or not the experience you're getting is curated based on lobbying, which really, really sucks. But yeah, so not only that, you get a huge marketing boost because not only are you marketing your title, right? How many times have you installed a driver from both AMD or NVIDIA and you start seeing game advertisements on the slideshow that's happening on the driver install? You think that was free? No, that wasn't free. It's another part of the exchange taking place. The back-end handshake or the gentleman's agreement or cash agreement saying, because we're buying and spending so much money on the keys and the resources and stuff, we're going to also advertise for you on our platforms and such, whether it be email blasts, social media, whatever. That's why you see such heavy push between like NVIDIA and AMD when it comes to new games being launched. It's not just because they're hoping you're going to go out and buy a new graphics card. Let's face it. Right now, neither brand could really care whether or not you're buying a graphics card at a consumer level because they've already sold billions of them and billions of dollars worth of them at a business-to-business level. But it's just part of continuing that arrangement of just really influencing the overall gaming experience based on who has more money. And this is the first time I've personally seen just the blatant omission of a brand, in this case being Intel Arc, and a studio kind of being tone deaf on their response, saying, please be patient with us while we try and get this experience worked out. And then Intel's over here like, bro, we've been trying for years. First of all, Crimson Desert probably has been in development for 10 years, okay? Probably. Big AAA titles like that sometimes take a decade to make. That's longer than Battle Mage and Alchemist have been out as a whole. So for Intel to say from the moment Arc was conceived, they've been communicating with Pearl Abyss to try and get resources to them to support their graphics, I don't buy it. I don't buy that Pearl Abyss has oopsed in this one. I think it was by design. And I think it was almost like a collaborative effort potentially between AMD and NVIDIA to say, It's like the little brother syndrome, right? You got two older brothers and they're just picking on the younger brother, and it's almost like they just do it because they can at this point. I cannot imagine any developer accidentally omitting a big player. It's Intel. Whether or not they have a huge graphics card division representation or not, there's a lot of people that are buying them. They're available right now. You can go to any Best Buy, Micro Center. They're available. You can buy them. And they're starting to gain a little bit of traction. And those that have bought in and have been running ARC GPUs have overall had a pretty good experience. There's been some outliers and some really bad experiences that have been publicized. But Intel is making a lot of effort to have their graphics division become a serious player in all of this. And yeah, Pearl Abyss just didn't even try to hide their intent on leaving them out of this. So it's a big deal for consumers to know that this kind of stuff is happening behind the scenes. So this is why I also say don't pre-order games, because obviously this one's a complete buggy mess. And I mean, what do you expect if you pre-ordered it and now you're mad? You only got yourself to blame. So because if you'd waited, you'd know right now based on the day one feedback that it's an absolute shit show. Go watch Gamers Nexus's video of it. Like the bugs and stuff that he was showing at the very start was pretty hilarious, and the jokes write themselves because it's so bad. But yay for games just continuing to suck. All right, there you go. I just wanted to get this one out because I was like, wow, really? I really not jumping on the day one train of everyone going like, it's broken on Intel, for Intel to come and say, you've left us on red for years, dude. What do you guys think? Do you guys think it's by design? Do you think it was accidental? Or do you think it's a collaborative effort to try to hold ARC down? Sound off in the comments below. As always, we'll see you guys in the next one.